Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Inspiring Life Journeys, where we have conversations with everyday people about their ups and downs of life and the lessons they've learned and what they can share with us so that we can live a better life. So today we have an interesting, really interesting guest and a great friend of mine, Esther McIntyre. But before we do that, I'm just going to give you a really quick short intro to what our show is all about. So there we go. So today I'm going to bring in Esther McIntyre. She's the CEO of Flourish After 50. Hi, Esther.
Hi, good to see you.
You too. It's so great to have you here today. Thank you for taking the time.
Oh,
I know you have a busy. Yeah. Yeah. So thanks a lot. And ever since I've known you, you're such a great person. You have such an interesting life, and you've gone through a lot. I know, in life and business as a whole. So that's what our show is all about, just having conversations with you. So before we get started, just so that we give our readers a little bit of a glimpse of who you are and what you do, I'm going to just tell them who you are. I'm just going to read what I have because I want to make sure I capture everything accurately.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Okay, great. So Esther McIntyre is a sexagenarian, best-selling author and food lover and non-enthusiastic exerciser. Yeah, that's a great one. In order to move forward through the aging process, it's important to stay mentally and physically strong. After years of education and research, Esther has become the pro-aging expert, top-rated health and lifestyle coach, author of a best-selling book, Fitness for Women Who Love to Eat and Hate to Move, and creator of the life-lifting and performance-boosting mentorship and community, Defy Your Age, Live Better, Perform Better, and Flourish After 50. Her clients have big dreams, goals, and ambitions, but feel apprehensive about aging. They love what they do and intend to continue contributing. They want to look and feel good and are willing to take charge of how their future unfolds. Esther's on a mission to arm these women with the mental, emotional, and physical strength and resilience to accomplish more than they did when they were younger. So, in Esther's words, for years I have had this vision in my head of how I should look. The truth is, it wasn't a vision, but rather a delusion. In my mind, I imagined a taller, sleeker version of Esther. In reality, I'm a 5'2" woman with a big personality and hips to match. That's funny, yeah. How do you reconcile what we are versus what we believe and who we should be? After many years of exploration, trial, and error, I have learned that each of us is a cut from a custom cloth, requiring uniquely exquisite solutions. There is no one nutrition or fitness regimen that works for everyone. However, do not despair. I've learned that with a well chosen team, it is possible to focus on the health span rather than lifespan. Traveling a road that leads us to being our fit selves, aging with health, power, and dignity. Hi, Esther. You are talking to just me, I think, a lot of this.
Everybody says that to me. We all are in that same boat.
I know, who love to eat and hate to move. That's me.
That's me too.
Yeah. Yeah, there are so many golden nuggets from what you had written that what I read out over there. But I like to go back a little bit to your journey in life because that's what all our show is about. From the time you were young to what you are now, you've probably had tons of experiences that have built you to be a better and stronger person. So let's go back to your childhood. I like to go back way when you're young. Let's go to your childhood and let me give our listeners a little bit about what it was like growing up.
Well, I am the product of two clinically obese parents. So my dad was up 100 pounds, down 100 pounds, up 100. He died young as well. And so that influenced me early on. But I write in my book, I talk about the fact that we grew up in the housing projects. And I don't know if you've ever been in a housing project apartment, but they're tiny. And they have these little galley kitchens that
Mhm.
have room for only a small refrigerator. And I always was interested to know that we purchased an additional refrigerator, a big one that was in the dining room. So, how interesting is that? We were the only people that I knew of all of my friends that had a huge refrigerator in addition to the little one in the dining room. That speaks volumes, right?
Right, right. You had your parents had a vision there. What was to come?
It was all about the food. I don't know
Right.
if anyone else grew up that way, but every holiday, whether it was sadness or happiness, it was all remedied with food or celebrated with food.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I grew up, all about the food.
Right. And then what took you? What was the life like growing up? In school, college. What led you to the path? You know, through the fitness. Last, you've had some great stories that let's hear about some of them.
You know, to this day, I really do feel that food is part of the joy of life. I
Hmm.
truly do. And I want to show you this picture that's on the cover of my book. Can you see that picture?
Yes, I
That
can.
is my baby picture. And then off here is the ice cream. And I always people say, how did your mother get, that look on your face where you're so intently looking off to the side? And I'm here to tell you that all she had to do is put some food out there in my peripheral vision. And that still works to this day. You know,
Oh,
there's just something comforting about food.
mhm.
So I think that if I had to nail down where my journey started was with the love of food.
The
So, I mean,
food.
I
Mhm.
had a traditional childhood. I mean, I think as far as all of that goes, and I had a great but sedentary job for many, many years. I was not in the fitness industry, but rather I was in a marketing research firm in information systems, and I sat and I sat and I sat and I
Mhm.
followed those patterns that my parents followed. So what I did was I gained and lost 65 pounds 5 times during my adult life.
Mm.
Every time I got to the highest number, I would see my dad's 100 pounds up and down looming. I mean, I could have followed that same path, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
So, but that was the beginning of my struggle with weight, and not just weight, but health, because
Mhm.
genetic code bears strong. And I was wondering if I was doomed or destined to follow that path.
Yeah, yeah. We've come across so many times, where we reach that, and then we can say we got to do something, and then it comes down, and then slowly it creeps back up again. So it is a tough road to, but you've mastered that, and you're great that you're teaching everyone how to do that.
Yes. Well, let me tell you what I did the last time I gained that weight. I did what any self respecting woman would do. I went to a plastic surgeon and I said, I want you to suck it out.
Mm.
Thankfully, he was conservative and he said,
Mhm.
I would do that for you, except you're too big. So let me tell you, when a plastic surgeon who could make thousands and thousands of dollars from a procedure turns you away, you know that you have a problem, right?
Right,
So
right. Mhm.
I thought, he said, I want you to lose about 50 pounds. So I said, fine, I'll lose 50 pounds. And I took the path of least resistance at that time, because really, honestly, I was tired of fighting the battle.
Mm.
So I took fen-phen. Now, I don't know if any of your listeners remember fen-phen, but it was
Mhm.
phentermine and fenfluramine. So one was an upper and one was a downer. And I thought it was a miracle drug. And just to illustrate how skewed my thinking was, they ended up taking fenfluramine off the market
Right.
because it was causing heart problems for people.
Mm. Mhm.
My response was, oh, I'm so glad I got to take it while it was on the market. Not, oh my gosh, Do I have a heart problem? Oh my, no, no. I was just glad that I had the opportunity to take it. That just shows you how skewed my thinking was.
Right, right. There's so much out in the market there, which you really don't know what the effects are. It looks all pretty and miracle working thing, but you got, like you said, you really got to pay attention to what that is.
You,
Have Was that the first time you had to lose the 50 pounds, or had you done it before that and come back?
That was the last time.
Last
So
time.
the last time I gained the weight, I had done it, gained and lost it 4 times previously, and I was just tired of fighting the battle, so I took an easy route. But I'll tell you, I did have some surgery. This was when I was 40 years old, and I'm right now 67. And right, so
don't look at it all. Yeah, health and fit.
Yeah, it's work, but so at that time, I thought I knew that Fen was not my ticket. So after I had recovered, I asked the doctor if he knew of anybody who could help me with a more holistic approach. And he sent me to a chiropractor who I don't even think is practicing any longer. And I went on a traditional, calories in, calories out, and I went to my local big box gym. And the thing that was notable about that for me was that everybody was doing the same thing in that gym. So everybody was lunging across the floor. It didn't matter your age. It didn't matter your weight, your physical composition. Everybody was doing the same thing. Now, this chiropractor at the time said, I've got a friend. He's trainer to the stars, and he's willing to give you a free session. Now that housing mentality, that housing project mentality came back, and I thought, if he's trainer to the stars, I'm not going because I'm not going to be able to pay for him. That was my broke mentality at the time. And my husband, who I adore, said to me, what do you have to lose? He's going to give you a free session. Right. If you can't afford him, you know how to say no. So I went. And it was life-changing for me. And the reason for that is that his undergrad degree is in exercise physiology, but his master's and doctorate were in psychology. Wow. So while he was beating me up on all that equipment, he was also up in my head. And he said to me, I said, well, I'm interested. I knew he was different, but I said, I'm interested in your services. Can you tell me your fee? And he said, why don't you come back? Well, right then my antenna went up. That was my little, really? You're not going to tell me the price of this? I did come back several times. And at the end of the day, his pricing was not only expensive, he would not see me less than twice a week. And I had to join that very expensive local tennis club because that was the only place he worked. And I want to tell you, here's the first message I would tell people. Where there is a will, my mom used to say this to me, there is a way. Right. And I thought, okay, I did commit to working with him. I immediately had buyer's remorse because of the funds involved.
We all go through that, right?
But for 2.5 years, what I would do, I learned how to sell things on eBay. And then I would go to Ross and TJ Maxx and Marshalls and all those stores. I would buy things that I thought would sell. I would put them up on eBay. And if they didn't sell, I returned them. And that's how I paid for him for 2.5 years. Wow, so I found that way, right? Yeah, good for you. And so true. I remember that saying, growing up to where there's a will, there's a way. And you found that, you had the will that you wanted to do that and work with him. And you found your means to make it happen. See, I think that's where your entrepreneurial journey started. I'm sure it is. That's my feeling. Well, what's interesting about that is I was not in fitness at the time. I was still working a really good position in corporate with a really nice salary and benefits in corporate, but it was still a sedentary position. And it also had attached to it the pressure of deadlines and so on. Anyone who's making that kind of a nice income in corporate also had, at least in my day, you had to put forth that effort.
Right.
But one day, this same coach said to me, "It's time for you to pay it forward." And I said, "What? What does that mean?" He said,
Right.
"You need to go back to school. You'd be great at this. You need to help others." And honestly, I did not think I had the bandwidth.
Mm.
I was working so many hours and I just wasn't sure. But I thought, okay, I'll at least try with a credential. I mean, this is the antithesis of what I did for a living.
Mm-hmm.
It's the hardest thing I ever did. I mean, when you first go for your credential, those of you out there who've done it, you have to learn every bone, every muscle, every this, and the test, only 65% of people pass it the first time. So for me, this was, what on earth have I gotten into, But I did. I passed the first time.
Good for you.
And
Yeah.
I started in my home with my friends just to see if it was something I could even put into practice. And I got busy very quickly. And then I rented space in a chiropractic facility for 2.5 years. And then I got my own place. And I had a 3,600 square foot facility in Los Angeles for 15 years.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great start, Esther. And it's what a great mentor that you had over there to tell you to pay it forward, and for you to go back after being in the corporate for so long. It's not easy going back to get your credentials. That
Crazy.
and a tough one at that. So that was a great accomplishment that you did.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, that's about 20 credentials ago. Now it's, one of the things that's so important to me is to keep abreast of what's up and coming in longevity research. And since I spent many years in the research industry, it's something that is not that hard for me to understand, how to read the studies, how to interpret the data. For me, that's really what I do for my clients, because it's hard to know what's the best thing to do in fitness,
Right.
nutrition, and movement.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I know you've evolved in so many different ways in your business, but now you have the Flourish After 50.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about what made you choose that path, and who you're trying to serve and reach.
Well, COVID for me was ultimately a silver lining.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think so at the time, because the one thing that people were not coveting in March of 2020 was a fitness establishment in Los Angeles. So, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, as gym owners and health studio owners, we were given notice the same day that we were to close down by midnight that night. Wow. And I told our front desk people, call every member we have and send them, have them bring their largest vehicles, send them home. We sent them home with trampolines and balls and bands and anything that wasn't nailed down in our studio, we sent them home with and streamed live the next day. It was a hot mess because none of us knew. I was not a Zoom studio. And so we were all learning together. It was so funny. We were learning together.
Right.
So the long and the short of it is that my demographic, it's always been 50 and over. It wasn't always just women 50 and over. And still, my private clients are male and female. But I decided that the very thing that we needed to do to stay healthy is what we were not allowed to do at that time. And people that were my age were really fearful. And I had a deep respect for COVID and everything wrapped around it. But my first priority was to keep those people moving. I knew that it was the very thing they needed. So we, I had 6 employees at the time, and we kept the studio for 2 years following that. But I could see the handwriting on the wall. COVID had changed everything. It had brought so many people who said, well, I'm never going to work out online. I don't like, ended up loving it.
Mhm.
Loved it more than they thought they would. And some came back to the studio, but I knew that it would never be what it was.
Mhm.
So I simultaneously, my book was due to be released. Guess when? March of 2020.
Right. Right. Right after that, right? Yeah.
So I pulled the
What
book back.
timing?
I know. Well, I pulled the book back. I got to write a chapter on COVID. And then I thought I have to find a way to reach people that
Mhm.
are in the aging process. I need to find a way to reach them and keep them healthy. So I wrote a course, and the course had gone through different names, but we did multiple betas of the course, and the final name was Flourish After 50. And that's how the name came.
Oh, yeah, that's great. That's great. I remember the time then when, you were in such a situation where rules were put in place for one area and you couldn't do anything. But what a great way I love the fact that you gave all your equipment to your clients.
We did.
Not many people would do that, just to keep them going. And so that really shows your heart for your clients and wanting them to continue their journey and not just get back into being set, just sitting and, not working out. So that's a great, great method that you took.
It is a passion for me.
Mhm.
And had it not been for COVID, I would probably still be inside my studio because I adored that as well. But this silver lining has given me an opportunity to reach so many more people. So
Right.
that's a big deal for me. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
I would have done that otherwise.
Yeah. It's really opened up things that you'd never thought of before, right? You would never
Me,
have thought of work.
yeah, and I was willing to learn. I knew nothing about
Mhm.
writing a course. I knew nothing about the software required. And so I would teach all day and then record those modules in the
Uh-huh.
evenings. You remember that,
Yeah, I
right?
remember that. Yeah, and you were giving away so much information. It was such valuable information that you shared, and you continue to share with everybody.
Right? We keep updating it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
know.
Before we go on, I want to touch on that beautiful book of yours.
Oh,
Right? I love the title of it. So tell us a little bit about what people can, don't give it all away, but just a little bit about what people can expect when they get that book. And I think everybody needs to go and get that book from of Esther's. It's got so much of beautiful information in it.
when I first wrote this book, it was a
Mhm.
calling card. And
Mhm.
I still give them away sometimes if I'm local or if I'm on a stage speaking. And so the first half of it is a calling card. It's about me, how I got into this, why I got into this. And I do want to talk. It's actually being updated. It's in a
Mhm.
second edition being written now. But I want to talk about the second half of the book because most of the people that come to me are so confused about nutrition and movement, and I can see why it's really can get people frozen in their tracks. I mean, if you think about it, there's um, there's keto, carnivore, vegan. I mean, it's so hard for people to decide what's right. And the internet is our friend and the internet is not our friend because
Right.
so
Mhm.
much information. And I know you're not going to believe this, but not all of it is correct.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
one
Yeah,
thing,
yeah.
the one thing I will say to you that is the truth is what you said in the introduction, Shanta, and that is that each of us is cut from a custom cloth. We are
Mhm.
uniquely designed, and what works for me doesn't work for someone else. And so there are some tenets that work across all diets. I'll call them diets, but they're really, for me, lifestyle changes.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I'm going to give you the first one because if you just implement this one thing, we can talk about it a little bit later, you will see changes in just 2 weeks. So here's one of the golden nuggets I would give you. As much as we don't like it, you have to cut down on the sugar. And the American Heart Association recommends 25 grams of sugar a day for women and 35 for men. But I tell my clients, if you could get close to that, you're going to see changes within 2 weeks' time. And they do. Every single one of them sees changes. And then I teach them the easy ways to wean off. So, yeah. But that would be my first recommendation. And that's across all lifestyle changes.
That's great. Now, along those lines, I've cut back on my sugar, but I haven't really, I use the stevia or the Splenda. What are your thoughts on about using those?
I think the two that I recommend to my clients are stevia and monk fruit extract.
Monk fruit extract. Okay.
Yes. And I don't like this Splenda because you can have some side effects with the Splenda. I get people off of the sucralose. Okay. So I would think the first two, if you need some sweetener and the monk fruit extract, they make little drops that I still like a little sweetener in my coffee, and all you need is like 3 drops.
Oh, gotta try that. Yeah, I've been using stevia, and I know I've heard about the side effects of the Splenda, so I kind of weaned away from that. Don't do that anymore. But thanks. That's also a great thing. Yeah, sugar is, especially if somebody craves for sweets and chocolates, which I'm not that big a great fan of, but I try not to do that. So thank you for those tips that you've given everybody.
Oh, absolutely. All health, and the research is so robust in the aging process, it's all about inflammation. You must have heard that before. Have you heard that, Shanta? All about internal inflammation. And we are each so different that some of the things that cause me inflammation might not do it for someone else. So it's important to customize your nutrition, customize your movement, and even how you respond to mental stimuli. Right. So, we have 5 pillars that I teach on: nutrition, methodological movement for your body, for who you are, how to get and stay confidence, how to regain that confidence, how to ignite excitement in your life, because, the aging process brings with it some challenges that we may not expect. And sometimes those can result in even just a little bit of depression or sadness. And so we talk about ways to reignite excitement. And then I think most importantly, and this maybe should be the first one, is how to build a customized team to get you through the aging process. And that team is different for each of us.
Right.
Good coaches need good coaches. Right?
Yeah, it's a combined effort, right? It's just, if you just go on one path and you don't have the support, it's not going to last very long.
That's exactly right. I think the majority, and I'm not anti-medicine or doctors at all. I think, I love my doctor, but a lot of times at least in our country, what's practiced is this whack-a-mole medicine. You know what that is? Where a thing sticks its head up and you take a hammer and you try to hammer it down, right? We're chasing after illness instead of working more on prevention. And that's the world I grew up in. And things are changing now, big time.
Yeah. It's easy to see those shiny objects and say, I need it like the next 2 weeks, next month, I need to get to where I am. But it's really a journey.
It's
a journey.
Right. And the key is to learn to love yourself right now, even before we start this journey. I work with women, Shanta, that are high income earners. They're doers. And a lot of them are 65, 70 and beyond. And their intention is to keep going until they can no longer do so.
Right.
And what happens with high producing executives and entrepreneurs is that everybody else gets put on the list before themselves. So they serve their clients and their families and their friends, and they end up last on the list. health suffers when you do that. Sure.
Right. And you kind of hit a point over there when you said, and I'm guilty of that, you got to love yourself in a way, we are the worst critics, right?
Right.
For how we look or how we feel, just have acknowledging that
Right.
and getting the right support to do that.
Right.
will
Let's
take you. Mhm.
tell you some of the things about aging. And I can look in the mirror and I can do this. I can see on the outside what's changed in the aging process. We all can. But
Mhm.
this is the first time that we've ever had a window to the inside. This is the first time that so let me give you an example of that.
Mhm.
So I research the tools that will help us to know what's going on the inside. I'll give you one example of that. Have you ever heard of a continuous glucose monitor?
Mhm.
A CGM is something you wear on your arm. I don't have one on right now, but it measures the glucose. It measures your body's response to the glucose that you take in.
Okay. Mhm.
So now when you go to your doctor for your annual exam, they'll do an A1C test, they'll do your cholesterol and all that stuff. But remember that is a snapshot in time, number one. And number two, it is a fasting test. So when I asked my doctor for a continuous glucose monitor, he said, you don't need that. You're not pre-diabetic, you're not diabetic. And, we had to have a little meeting of the minds for him to write me a prescription for one of those. So I got the prescription and I wore it for 3 months. And I did this because I don't believe I could effectively teach on something that I haven't really experienced. So
True. Mhm.
I do that whenever possible. But what I noticed was that I would see these spikes up and down, these up and down spikes. That's not a good thing when you have consistent spikes like that. And things that I wouldn't think would really spike my glucose were things like a quarter cup of quinoa on broccoli. Like, why would that spike me? So then I had a 45-minute conversation with my doctor talking about these spikes. And he said, oh, that means you're insulin resistant. And, maybe that's not so great because, it's kind of like a precursor to diabetes or pre-diabetes. And so gave me a little attitude, to be honest, because this is the person that fought me when it came to getting the thing.
Mhm.
So then I read another book called Glucose Revolution. It was a great book about how to blunt those spikes. So the key is to make that line as level as you can make it. And that's what I did. And I started not only learning the hacks, I'll call them hacks, biohacks, but teaching them to my population so that even if they weren't wearing a monitor, they would do these things anyway in case they were spiking. That's just one small example of many tools that I use to help people get to know what's going on the inside.
Yeah, what a great way to experience that so that you can teach that. And I never knew that we could have that monitor, which would be really, you're almost like showing them the ways to do it. So that's awesome.
I'll share with you, if you want, one of the hacks that I learned.
I'd love to have our listeners learn about these.
This is an easy one. So, and I've tested it while wearing my monitor. So if you're going to be eating a dinner that has maybe some carbohydrate in it, I'm going to give you 2 hacks. The first one is that and I love her book, but the book Glucose Revolution is something that's a great book to read. But I would say to you that before you eat that meal, about a half hour before, take about a teaspoon of vinegar, put it in water, drink it through a straw so that it doesn't mess up the enamel on your teeth, and drink it about a half hour before your meal. That's the first thing. That helps to blunt the spikes.
Wow. Okay.
The second thing is the order in which you eat your food makes a difference. Now, luckily in America or in the United States, we usually have a salad first, right? Like, so that's our appetizer, if you will. So salad first, protein, fat second. And then if you're going to have a carbohydrate, don't eat it together with everything else. Eat it at the end, right? So the order in which you eat your food matters.
Right, right. What about
Right.
fruit? If somebody wants some fruits, where do they fit that in?
I would say if you're going to have fruit, stick with the berries because they're lower on the glycemic index. This is all the stuff I teach. But I would also tell you that if you're able, for 10 minutes after your meal, stand and walk in place. You don't have to go out for a run, you know, but just stand and play. I put on music for 10 minutes, you know, after I eat. But I don't eat tropical fruits because I found from having more in that monitor that they stop. And I stick to blueberries, raspberries, some strawberries, you know, it's the lower glycemic fruits.
And is that you eat in the beginning or?
I try to eat, if I'm going to have carbohydrates, try to eat them earlier in the day.
Okay.
That just works for me. And also, you know, people have said, well, it doesn't matter if you eat before you go to sleep. My opinion is that it does matter. I try to leave 2 hours before my last bite and going to sleep. And it isn't about weight loss. It has nothing to do with that. It's about your body being able to digest your food.
Right.
Back in the day, I had a trainer who used to say to me, don't eat that nighttime snack unless you're planning on jogging in your sleep. You know, your body just needs, it digests easier when you have less food in your stomach.
Right.
Sleep better as well.
Okay, great. Thank you for those great tips. Yeah, I'm sure that, you know, if everybody who needs it just implements part of those things, they'll see a big difference in how they feel.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially the sugar thing, you will see a change in 2 weeks' time. No doubt. For me.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Esther. You know, a life is a journey, right? And that's how our show is all based on. But it's also for me, part of it is my travel journeys. So since my business is travel related, so I had to throw in some travel related questions to you. What are some of the favorite places that you've been to? Or what do you like to go to?
You know, my husband and I are hooked on zip lining.
Yes.
And so I can tell you that my next trip will be to Costa Rica because I haven't been. Everybody tells me that the best zip lining is there. But Victoria, Canada, if you haven't been there, the zip lining there, if you're a zip lining person, magnificent. I mean, I've also zip lined on some of the highest zip lines in Hawaii. Those were great, but I preferred Victoria to that. And so I would say of all the places, Victoria, Canada, oh my gosh. I know you, I don't have to ask you, Shanta. I know you.
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful, I haven't done ziplining in Victoria, but it's a beautiful place.
You're in the forest.
Oh, okay.
You know, and so rather than walking from zip line to zip line, you know, you zip line, they close that gate behind you, they open a gate in front of you, and it's a whole other zip line, or it's one of those what felt to me to be a rickety bridge that you walking across.
Right.
Yeah. So if you look at my recent social media, I think one of my last posts was a picture of me walking across this rickety.
Yeah. I love that. You know, I love that you're Costa Rica. We've done the zip line in Costa Rica, and that's is a lot similar like Victoria, where you go from, you know, new number of different platforms to go through the over the rainforest. And
that's what I want to do next.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So Esther, before we wrap it up, and thank you for all the great tips, for sharing everything and for taking the time. But before we wrap it up, I do want to give you the opportunity to share how people can connect with you, your social channels, and you know, whatever information you can provide to them with the best way to reach you.
Yes. Well, okay. So you could go to my website, which is flourishafter50.com. if you opt in there or you watch the workshop there, you'll be able to get all the latest and greatest information that I send out. And you can also go to the contact page on that website and just book a no obligation consultation with me. You know, I just am passionate about aging with power. And you notice I never say aging with grace, because I've never been graceful or genteel. So I say aging with power. You can book a call with me right there on that calendar that's on that page.
Okay. And then on your social channel, what are the channels that you are on?
It's Flourish After 50 MHS. And I'm on Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook, and we are just now beefing up. I have a YouTube channel as well, but we're beefing that up now. So yes, those are my 3 social media channels. The MHS stands for My Health Studio, because Flourish After 50 is powered by My Health Studio. So it's Flourish After 50 MHS.
Yes. Okay. Okay, that's great. And, we'll put that in our comments at the end of the show as well. But thank you, Esther. One of the quotes that I read about life's journeys, and I thought it was so thing is, it says, "I'm learning to trust the journey even when I don't understand it."
Oh, that's a good one.
And I think in your life, even just through all your experiences that you've done, you couldn't understand part of it, but you trusted the journey, and look where you are right now,
I did trust the journey, and I'm still trusting the journey.
Yeah, it's a continuous process, right? Yeah.
Everything is revealed to us right out of the gate, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you, Esther. Thank you so much for taking the time. Listeners, do share, subscribe, and comment, and share this video with our conversation with Esther, and just share it out to your social media, and also connect with Esther. More importantly, is connect with her and get to know her, and see how you can continue to be in touch with her and learn from her. And thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so let's wrap it up with our closing here. So just hang on, Esther.